Okay, welcome to another live stream. I just realised that last night I failed to show off what I'd written. Not that I really need to show it off. I'm really just wanting to make sure that it reads all right. It's been a while since I've done some writing, so just need to keep that in mind, people. It's not going to be perfect. I'm going to change the font size so that it's visible from your end. And don't worry, I'm going to go back over it in a second. So 36. I'll go back over it in a short while. Just going to change it all to 36 point. It's pretty massive, but let's just accept that for the moment. I think that 36 point is something that you can read from your end. And I'm just going to go and discuss some of the things that are in here and possibly add some detail. Alright, so that's that, and then we'll go and change that to 36 as well. And then I'm going to show off what I've done. Okay, so first things first. Alright, so the people of Valini waited patiently for the arrival of their new overlords. But waiting is boring without a few drinks. The innkeeper, who had called the central keep of the town of Devlin his home for more than 20 years, was the first to notice that thirsty visitors to his town as they stared uneasily in the sun, despite the cold and threatening rain. He was also the first to consider the financial benefits of supplying their need before they even realised it, disposing of some overrated lolly water that was taking up cellar space. So, first things first, we've got I'm going to see if I can expand it. Okay, so that might be better for the purposes of reading it out and showing it off. So, we've got Master Alchemist Wild Bee, who is the tavern keeper. Now, when I say tavern keeper, I'm just going to show where he lives. So his home is the central keep of the town. Anyway, back to the story. So Wild Bee, and he's also got Master Appraiser, an apprentice alchemist under his direction. We've also got, so the appraiser lives in the keep as well, and there's also a herbalist as well. So they make up an adventuring party. So not they do much adventuring. So it's just that they work together as a team. They're comrades. They've known each other for a long time. They trust each other more than other people, etc., etc. So anyway, continuing on with the story, Civil War had made it difficult to receive regular supply of some basic necessities. Apologise for my spelling. Unavailable from local manufacturer or grower. And yet fine liquor and ales from all over the world had made their way here to his town. Okay, I'm going to call it his. He's not in charge. He happens to have been in the central keep happens to have been in his family for a long time, and he has no ownership of it. Doesn't have the title deed to it, for example, things like this. The keepers of the peace, as they officially called themselves, or occupying troops, as many of the people of the town considered them, were fond of these imports, and he had taken advantage of his contacts outside of the province to supply them. With the numbers of foreigners who'd gone through the port during the Bellini Civil War, business had boomed. So during the Civil War, there were some individuals who made a killing. They basically were selling arms, weapons, armor, all sorts of adventuring equipment, all sorts of military equipment, but also tasty things that the visitors enjoyed. Most especially in supplying the Daquin regimental commander and his cronies, who'd made the town of Devlin their headquarters. So, yeah, not a necessarily garrison, a huge garrison or anything like that. They were out in the boonies throughout the province and into the wilds, as part of their unofficial official attempt to subjugate and take over Bellini. Anyway, their tastes in beverages varied, but all were top shelf. In the final months of the war, a few of the officers in charge of the small garrison of troops paid in advance for some fine sparkling and bubbling grape wine. And then, unfortunately for them, and unfortunately for him, because them, so they collectively, pulled out at the end of hostilities without taking the cases of wine with them, possibly aided by the fact that he didn't advise them of the shipment's arrival. Wild B was quick to realise a sure thing. So Wild B, he's been running a tavern out of the old central keep of the town. Anyways, now we're going on to some new people. These are the people of Muck Kampal. So these people live to the north of the town. So Indigo Amarok awoke with a mouth that was strange and disturbing and horrible. He thought he remembered having once had a brief encounter with a similar taste in the wilderness that was immediately spat out at the time, but he didn't seem to have spat anything out now, or thrown up while he slept, or most likely passed out. He realized his head and body was covered in straw, and the rain had penetrated every layer of clothing that he was wearing. Or was it the moat? He vaguely remembered a challenge from Lithium Vengeance, his comrade for more than 10 years, and the blood brother since his first wound during the war. The challenge being that he was to dive off the topmost battlement of Wild B's Tavern, the former keep of the town when it was first built 1,000 years in the past, into the moat that surrounded it. The bubbling concoction was supposedly safe to drink, and at a very reasonable price. But if diving 50 feet into murky moat of questionable depth and questionable healthy, questionable cleanliness, purity. You don't go swimming in the nearest water pool of runoff water from an alchemist laboratory, which Wild B had in one of the upper rooms. So, yeah, Wild Bee's an alchemist. And he's also the publican. And, yeah, I didn't even think about that. What a stupid idea of jumping into a moat that could possibly have all sorts of strange runoff. Anyway, his other companions, Elusive Eagle, Rainbow Scorpion, and Cobalt Swan, were opposed to the dive, yelling insults at him until their cries had alerted the entire town to his antics and attempted to talk him out of it, for which he was thankful. They knew better than to try and stop him physically, and he was touched that they still cared enough about his survival after all these years. Master Alchemist Wild Bee had brewed him many a strange draught in the past of medicinal value. However, Wild Bee didn't usually bottle his brews in fine crystals with corks that flew yards into the air when popped just right. In fact, his pillow seemed to be just such a bottle, with its cut design pressing into his cheek, although not painful as his face was still asleep. This, despite his mind being awake. Rolling off the bottle and onto his back, he opened his eyes to the dawn. All around him, Indigo Amarok could see his companions as well as those from other villages, hamlets and farms of the province of Stockark. The only exception were the people of the town of... Right, so we've got multiple towns in this. We've got the town of Deblin, and over here we've got the town of Bella. Now, both the town of Deblin and the town of Bella were, well, neither of the two towns knew for sure where the new Baron Overlord would arrive. Many people went to Bella and waited there, but when nobody arrived, they were like, "Oh, hang on, they've all gone. The Baron must be going to Deblin." Anyway, so runners back and forward. Anyway, people ended up remaining in Deblin, and nobody in Bella wanted to go to Deblin. There's a bit of a rivalry between the two towns. Not a serious rivalry, but it did seem to get a bit strained and a bit more serious in terms of rivalry due to the Civil War, with different factions and different factions vying for each other, and these being the largest towns or the largest settlements in the province. They were a focus point, and there were two opposing camps, effectively. So the people of Bella, they didn't come along. So anyway, okay, so the town, only exception were the people of the town of Bella, who were under the impression that the new baronial overlord, okay, again, that's what the locals think, would be arriving in their town. And so had started a party their own. During the day, runners had travelled between the two towns and the other, and it just ended up that the majority of people of Stockach remained in I'm going to make it so that they remained in the town because of Wild B, effectively. So Wild B is, Wild B was in a position to get rid of. Well, he was quite happy to get rid of some of this sparkling, and so that's because he was free with his liquor that he didn't really want in the first place, and he managed to flog it off at a very cheap price and keep many of the people in the town. Right. Or so he thought. Okay. So we've got a bit of a description about another adventuring party. So we've got a few yards away, Indigo Amarok noticed Violet Finch resting her leg outstretched with her back against her pack, looking at him with distaste similar to a visual representation of the state of his mouth. He'd shot her in the leg 6 months ago as she escorted a group of Caesar II mercenaries through Stockach. And as the leg that he had shot was the one outstretched, he gathered that it was still troubling her. He did like her, well, at least who she was before the war. Now he wasn't sure how he felt about her. Knowing that she was a Caesar II supporter, during the Bellini Civil War, one step out of the grave, if some of the locals knew if certain one step out of the grave if certain locals knew some of the secrets that he knew of her. Her companions, Mercury, Vengeance, Wild Duck, Blue Bee, and Gold Jaguar, were also known to have similar pro-Caesar II beliefs. But Indigo Amarok didn't know them from before the war. And didn't care much about them now. And wasn't interested in hearing their pro-Caesar rhetoric. Pro-Caesar 2 rhetoric they were likely to inflict upon anyone an attempt possibly in order to justify their actions during the war. He shot Violet Finch in the leg out of memory of who she was before and not who she became or was now. Who knew who they were now? Who in the province of Stockak really knew who they were now? He'd done his own share of terrible things. How could he judge her? The arrow in the leg was a compliment or forgiveness or understanding. He didn't care what she thought of him, really. It was hard enough to just get by looking after your comrades and closest. Those who were close and hadn't betrayed you yet, Indigo Amrock said to himself as he struggled to his feet and probably staggered sideways without control to end up in the moat once again. So, yeah, he's still pissed and a little bit unable to stand straight. Anyway, now we're going to go on to Indigo Vulture's story. So, the splash caught us by Indigo Amrock hitting the surface of the moat, and the laughter of Violet Finch woke Indigo Vulture, artisan herbalist of the hamlet of Chitterbury, from a restless sleep. Filled with the crazed fire elemental spirits, dreams of the elemental plane of fire. The elemental spirit is bound to his sword wasn't particularly vicious or needy, but its personality bled into his dream state. he opened his eyes and found that the small fire he'd started before sleep was still burning merrily, kept alight by his niece, Aquamarine Tiger, who didn't sleep very much and was too uncomfortable around large numbers of people at the party that had engulfed the town of Devlin. Indigo Amarok had barely seen Aquamarine Tiger throughout the night, though he vaguely remembered her silhouette on the wall parapet overlooking the great river. Before she'd come back to the fire that she was now sitting beside. He'd only had a single bottle of Wild Bee's ridiculous bubbling wine, but even so, could fully understand why Indigo Amarok was currently entertaining the frog spawn midden water and possible failed potions that made up the contents of the moat. Good man, though Indigo Amarok hadn't let him know that. He'd let it be known. Hadn't told it. Hadn't told him to his face. He'd let it. He'd let it be known that he respected the younger artisan hunters' behaviour when they briefly allied with each other in an ambush against a band of Velini mercenaries who, despite Indigo Amarok's pro-Velini tendencies, required chastisement for their pillage of a herbalist's granary. Non-lethal, but some small justice in their exposure to Violet's fungus spore that had powdered the pit trap with, requiring them to leave the province in search of a remedy before the blight could take hold. The boat, Indigo Vulture said out loud as the discussions of the night before and their resolution came back to him. They all had something important today, which was the reason that he hadn't continued drinking. What he had to do today involved Indigo Amarok and his companions, as well as Violet Finch and her companions, as well as himself and his small family from Chittabori. Yes, Uncle, said Aquamarine Tiger, stirring the fire with a branch. The boat. Wild Bee looked down from the battlement of his home. Looked out down into the courtyard where his guests had slept the night, locked in by his own hands and the padlock that he'd fixed to the portcullis gate for their own protection. He didn't want them coming to harm and inadvertently dying as an oath breaker. Having consumed his wine, that he ended up giving virtually. In order to gain their oath of Hethnor goddess, to join him this day, join him on an expedition this day and for the next month. On an expedition to search for the lost village to the east of Deblin. The plan had come to him early in the afternoon of the previous day, as he pulled bottles out of his cellar and sold them at a ridiculous price, 50% of what they were worth. Though that was better than nothing, as he hadn't had to pay for them in the first place. He was comfortable and reconciled in the price he was charging, at least at first. However, as he watched the effect that the wine was having on some of the locals, clearly unaccustomed to both the ease with which it was consumed, as well as the potency he considered that they may be easy to persuade to join in on a little private enterprise, the idea of which had come to him while waiting for the Baron to arrive. What if the Baron doesn't arrive? Do nothing? Or recruit a group and do some explorations, find some treasure and come home? Do some exploration under his command, find some treasure, come home. Some fast talking combined with the bubbling wine might result in another 50% share of the loot from something he didn't again from something that he didn't have to pay for. It was easy enough to give his chosen few another bottle each on top of the one that they had paid for, and plant the seed of an agreement in their heads. Later in the evening, he had approached them one by one to make his pitch. Yet some of these people were sworn after only one bottle. The most bottles required were for Indigo Amrock, who ended up drinking 5 bottles. His companions, after Indigo Amrock had sworn, followed suit, though they seemed in what would ordinarily be friends backing their companion. Call. Though in Wild Bee's opinion, they seemed eager for adventure and required little persuasion. He'd seen it already as he served his customers. He'd seen it already as he'd served his customers who were veterans of the war. People who had lived through life and death and now had an itch that they couldn't scratch. Bloody idiots. Oh, bloody idiot. Bloody idiot. Wild Bee said as he watched Indigo Amrock haul himself out of the moat. Reference how easy it had been to gain his referencing his kind thrill seekers as well as his current state of unbalance. There we go. He's going to have a hangover. Anyway, so what I've done is I've grouped these 4 adventuring parties into one block, and I've done the same thing with others. So anyway, I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to show a couple of different aspects of what I want from geopolitical moves. So what I just wrote, look, I'm not going to do that with every single adventuring party and with every single geopolitical move. There's absolutely no way I can do that. Other people can do that. They can create works of fiction. They can do all that, becoming a bard licensee, for example, which means that they could effectively write all these stories, and they could could be published. It could be in-house. It could be even published out-house. So anyway, what I really need for anybody who wants to submit a geopolitical move is I need it to be brief and I need it to cover the basics. I'm going to be interpreting, look at the strategic goals and things like this, and then I'm going to interpret that and I'm going to apply it in a tactical way. So what I've created is, for example, the sponsor. So while B is the master alchemist of the town of Devlin. Strategic goal, search the coastline and up rivers if possible of the province of Stockark for evidence of a ruined town, village, hamlet or farm, beginning with the coast to the east of the town of Devlin. So while B has a boat, the boat is capable of having 20 people on board with enough supplies to last them. It's shallow draft, things like this. They can go up rivers. In a lot of cases, they're still navigable. Anyway, standing orders. So he's negotiated with the others before when practical. So he's trying to get a reasonable deal out of it. He's trying to make it so that he's getting their assistance without having to pay them anything for a share of the loot. So remaining on the boat whenever possible, popular vote required to get off the boat. They don't want to get off the boat. They don't know what's out there in terms of creatures, but what they do know is that the undead presence, the skeletal remains of their ancestors, are still, they're everywhere through the wilderness. Withdrawing to the boat, withdrawing to the boat to avoid conflict, if possible, and a fighting withdrawal to the boat if conflict is unavoidable. So they're not necessarily wanting to go and find a fight; they're wanting to avoid the fight and find the loot and get out. Return to the town at the end of each day when practical. Food and lodging provided by sponsor. Lodging, no. So they were asking for food and lodging, but while B is providing the lodging, and they'll basically be spending any of their income will probably be spent in his tavern, so he'll win from that one as well. Lodging provided by sponsor when in the town of Devlin. So he made sure that if they do stay at a different location, lodging on the boat when practical. In the field. So look, I'm writing this now as we're talking on this live stream, but I don't need to be involved in this process. I will, this process will just basically, it'll influence my moving the people around and things like this. Anyway, so that's that. So I'm going to save that off. And now we're going to look at the plan of this. So last night, just before going to bed, what I did was I just did a screenshot. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to then copy or cut. I'll cut this section here, cutting it, and then I'm going to paste it into the Word document that I created for it. So I'll just shut that down, don't save. Okay, so this is the move that I'm forecasting for these adventurers. So I'm going to now zoom in. All right, so they take the the boat from the wharf, from the docks inside the town, and they're going to move their way through. No, they're going to bypass Jaslo, and they're going to row along here. Now, when they get to here, I'm going to now go and click on over on the right hand side here. I'm not sure if you can see it. Unfortunately, I can't change the font size of the layers, so I can't really show you what's going on, but I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to take the boat in. Now Jaslo is just there. I'm going to take the boat in, and I'm going to just take the boat as far as I can take the boat, and then back out again. Now this is not taking that long, because really the distances aren't that huge. So taking the boat along to this point here, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up a different file, which is the I'm opening up the move file now. Hopefully everything's blacked out. Alright, so it is blacked out. Now again, I'm not sure if you can actually see what we've got here. I'm going to do something now to try and alleviate some of this. I'm going to change the font size to large, massive sort of thing. Then I'm going to go and I'll change that to 500. Okay, so black over movement. Okay, well anyway, that'll do. So black over movement. I'm then going to go and click on encounters, do the same thing. Black over encounters. And then going to do the same thing with loot. Black, oops. Black, oops. Alright, what's going on here? Right. Don't know. Anyway. Black over loot. Then I'm going to go to, oops, we don't want that. Okay, black over failures. Right, and then I've got black over refugees. So the situation is that these black layers, and I might seem like I'm being a bit pedantic, but I just don't want people to be thinking that there's even the slightest possibility that I'm showing favoritism towards any of the geopolitical players. So having said that, I'm just going to get stuck in. So look, I'm not going to go for a hard and fast on distances, at least for the geopolitical live streaming. So I'm not going to be like determining the exact length. I'm going to choose a movement card when I see fit. So the way it'll work in the live environment, with the tabletop we can work out that later based on the success or failure of what I'm doing right now. So anyway, I'm just going to click a little dot there. Going to zoom in. Oops. Going to zoom in on that dot. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. Okay, so now I've just created this dot. Now that's erasing the black over movement, and it's revealing something. So I'm going to work out what I've just revealed. At some point, it's going to show, it's looking like a line. Alright, why there's no text at the moment. Maybe I'm zoomed in too far. Okay, why is it so? Oh, there we go. Alright, maybe I was zoomed in well too far. Alright, so unopposed movement. Alright, this is a bit kludgy. I mean, I can do it like this. Now, why the... Unopposed movement loot card. Ah, this is undo. Right, for some reason the border of these cards is not present. So anyway, we're going to work with it. Anyway, unopposed movement. Back to here. So we're still going to progress with the eraser tool, and we're going to progress and following along here. Okay, I think that's enough annoyance to justify another movement. So zooming out, I'm going to click on there. I'm going to zoom in. Oops. It's a bit kludgy, but anyway, so all I'm looking for is the first word of whatever it is. Alright, let's just undo that. Alright, we've zoomed in way too far. Alright, I was wondering why I'm getting nothing but yellow. Okay, unopposed movement. I can't think of a way to do this without giving away too much information. So just going to persevere with it, and we're going to find the border of the bloody card. So this is like a deck of cards, so I've concealed right, there you go. Anyway, so yes, unopposed movement. Alright, okay, back to here. We're going to continue along this river. And another ink, I think another movement card drawing. Like these could be just drawn from a deck if we're doing this live. So I'm just going to zoom in Oops. Okay. Right, what have we got here? Alright, roving undead. So obviously as the river, as they're going along the river, they've basically, or along this creek, they have found that they are having a hard time getting through because there are roving undead. So draw again is really just a pain in the ass, but anyway, move on. So just for simplicity, I'm going to do that. And okay, so drawn again, and it's unopposed movement. So that's the result there. Going back to this, okay, selecting the eraser tool again, and we're just going to continue along. Okay, we've still on the boat. Now each of these pixels is 10 foot, so 10 foot is pretty good in terms of. Alright, so yes, they can stay on the boat in relatively safe situation. Alright, deciding to go right. Now let's just go back a step to here. So standing orders. Okay, so standing orders are when faced with a fork in a road or path, a road, path, river, lake, the group will turn initially, always turn right and not left without popular vote to go left. Alright, just a simple thing, but it avoids complications when it comes to the way that people want to move. I don't want to have to question it. I want to be able to just, mosey along. Okay, so going right means that I'm revealing this territory. Alright, and continuing right, and then I'm pulling back and going left. Alright, continuing on. So the fog of war, it's not just about revealing territory, it's also that I want to make it so that there is like a mist, and that the line of sight is reduced, so the undead presence is causing the mist. Now some of this greenery in the water is not going to be solid. It's not going to be it's like weeds and reeds and things like this, things that can be cleaned. You can clean it out and such. So staying on the boat, and look, because they're right now in the middle of this water, I'm pretty sure that they're safe. So I'm not pulling any movement cards. Well, I really should, because some of these will be water encounters. So anyway, I'm going to pull another card. Let's just say down here. Okay, what have we got here? An encounter card. Alright, so that's the encounter card. And I'm going to copy that. I'm then going to go into here, paste the encounter card, go back to here. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to I'm going to go to day 1 move, make sure it's the right layer. I'm then going to select a circle. It's going to be an empty circle. It's round 20. Okay, and so I'm going to put a circle over that and do it. Oops. Okay, another screenshot. Paste. And then I'm going to just cut that, delete that. Then I'm going to go back into here. Okay, so the what have we got here? So strategic goal. So I'm going to move that up to the strategic goal. Then I'm going to moves encounters. Okay, so we've got this encounter at this location. Alright, so let's process through. Alright, so we've just found an encounter, so that's the one that I've just revealed. Now I'm going to zoom back out, and then I'm going to unclick movement, unclick black over movement, and I'm going to go down and go to black over encounters. So now the easy thing for me to do is see how black over encounters, because I copied from there, there's no reason why I can't just simply, oops, okay, go back, zoom in, oops. Now I should be able to delete that. Why did it not disappear? Alright, so I'm going to do it again. This time. Ah, bloody hell. Right, so alright, so now I've got black over encounters, but I haven't selected encounters underneath. So when I go back and now I hit delete, right, so this is an encounter that, let's just say, well, anyway, it doesn't matter what I say. So black over encounters, and I'm gonna actually this time I'm going to cut it. Okay, so I've just cut the, oops, wrong one. Okay, go to encounters, and I'm going to cut the encounter. So I want to make it so the encounters are just once-off things, that they don't happen over and over again. Yeah, you can't just have once the entire list of once all the encounters have been processed in one of those sheets, I'll just get a new sheet. I want to make it so there's a finite number of creatures in a province. I don't want there to be nothing. If they do find, I might be able to add to the story. I might be able to put that there's pottery shards, or there might be some sort of archaeological or natural formation, or something that's not wealth. Not all about wealth driven. It's sometimes about story driven. So anyway, when I've got here promissory note for 4,873. So the concept of promissory notes for geopolitical is that in a live environment where you have adventurers going out and doing adventures, and there's a creature that they've attacked and they've destroyed, killed. They've then maybe skinned it, and they've taken the skin, harvested for, like, it's got claws, or any kind of medicinal or magical properties of something, that I want them to have item cards, and the item card will then be tradable. I don't want to have a value to it. In terms of, I don't want to be the one assigning the value. I want it to be driven by the community, by other adventurers, and make it so that make it so that I don't have to do all the work. Trying to assign a value to fantasy items and objects is a pain in the neck. So in this case, there's two ways of having a promissory note. So they've got a boat. The first thing is in terms of being able to load up the boat with things and stuff. It's easy because they've got a boat. They're on the boat. The encounter happened when they're on the boat. They don't have to transport it anywhere. All those things don't have to happen. Now there's two ways of doing it. You can just chuck all this loot into the boat. In a live environment, you can do that. But in the geopolitical, I don't want to be thinking about what type of items and objects and things. I don't want to have to account for, why is it that you've got a sword, or some armor, or why is it that there's a cache of food. None of that needs to be justified. So the way I've done it is that there's a promissory note. So there are two forms of promissory note. One is a promissory note from a priest of trade, who effectively puts the items into their bag of holding, and then they swear by Hethnor that this is an accurate appraisal of the value of the goods. It might be that they actually make an offer, and they in their opinion they can't lie. So they can't lie about something. They have to be honest, and if they value something, in their heads they can calculate how much the resale value of it is, and all those things, and come up with a figure. So there's the priests of trade who have bags of holding, and they can take the loot away quite easily. Now the other one is we've got, for example, we have Amethyst Cheetah. So not the best name for an appraiser, but cheetah in terms of the fast-moving cat. As a master appraiser, the entire geopolitical group can trust that a master appraiser is going to know how much something's worth. And as to what this stuff is, for the purposes of the processing a geopolitical move, it's not necessary for me to go into detail. Only that they've found some items, some things, resources, or finished goods, or the remains of something that still has some intrinsic value or real world value based on materials. Like, even if it's rusted, if it's solid, it might still have enough steel to be considered worthwhile. By scrap rusted steel still has a value even though it's rusted, because once it's smelted there might be 20% steel that can be reclaimed. Anyway, moving on. So they've found some stuff. The appraiser has considered it to be 4,875 silver pieces worth of loot. Now this is just on one day, and yes, there are 20 of them, and so splitting that 20 ways, it's not really the best sort of income for a day. Anyway, they continue on. So encounter 1. Alright, so continuing on. So as you can see, they haven't travelled very far, and so I'm just going to, it'll be an estimate when I say, when I determine how long a day is, it'll be an estimate. Anyway, so they're continuing on. And circumnavigating an island, going into another. Okay, so they've got like some inland water. I'm just going to firstly grab that line again, and I'm going to make sure that I'm on day 1 move, and I'm going to just draw where they've gone. On here with this line tool, I can make it go around corners and all sorts of things. So anyway, I'm doing this so that I can pretty much just keep accountability of where they've moved. I don't need to leave day 1 move. This is day 1 move for Wild Beat. So what? I can just strip it out, and as long as I've got, say, the Word document documenting what's going on, then that should be fine. Anyway, moving on. So I'm just going to take that out, and then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to continue to erase. So we're on the wrong layer. So again, we need to keep our eye on and make sure that before clicking any buttons that we're on the correct layer, because that's going to be one of the most important aspects of what we're doing here. Alright, still continuing the right, and looks like we've hit some shallows. So coming back, okay, and shallows again, not getting off the boat, making their way through the marshiness, and I'm just erasing as we go. There's no reason why they wouldn't be just moving around until they've revealed that entire lake. Now that doesn't mean that the mist has gone away. What it means is that effectively the priests of trade, they make their money from selling maps, as well as transport of goods, as well as people who still have faith in the gods, and they still wish to donate to the church and such. So look, I think that it's time for another encounter, or another possible encounter. So we'll go back up to the Black Over movement, go back to the movement layer, and I'm going to now be a little bit more aggressive with the deletion of things. So I'm going to go over here and delete that. Then I'm going to come down here, oops, unopposed movement. Okay. So we've got a few things like just here, for example. You can see that it's like this area that they haven't got off the boat. They've only seen what's there, and that's okay. We don't need to get off the boat, as in they vote not to get off the boat. So now they've done this here, continuing back along on the other bank. So now they are going in a southerly direction, and they're still continuing right. So from their perspective, it's right. Pushing through some of this, reeds and matted stuff with the boat. A little bit difficult. All right, so continuing back along. So anyway, so what I was saying about the mapping is that you can declare to a priest of Hethnor that what you've described to them is accurate, and then it gets added to the maps that they sell. So revealing this territory is effectively, let's just call it mapping. Anyway, so they've traveled along here, and this entire search, I think that justifies them returning back to well, let's just say that they're not going to row all the way back to Devlin. It's not that far, but it's a little bit unnecessary. But they may as well anchor at Jaslow. So they're going to row back to Jaslow, and that's where they're going to leave. That's where they're going to leave their leave off for day one of Wild Bee's expedition. So I'm going to continue with other moves and things like this. Sorry. So they're going to extract themselves. So coming back, I think that it justifies having another encounter. The reason is that just because they've looked doesn't mean that there's no encounter for the place that they went to. So let's just go and zoom in. So yeah, just because they've gone through doesn't mean that they... Alright, so now we've got to here. I'm going to go over here and go and open up this one here. Alright, encounter cited, and then it says it's optional. So, oops. Alright. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal the entire card again. Alright. So that's the card. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to jump into here. I'm going to paste there. Oh, why didn't that paste anything? Okay. Didn't paste anything because, again, I was on the wrong layer. So that's the movement one. I'm going to copy from the movement one. So layers is going to be interesting because people are going to see me making some mistakes. Oh. What happened there? Don't know. Alright, so copy. I think I might have been stupid enough to paste all. So encounter 2. We'll use the same. Oh no, we won't use the same. We'll go back and we'll put a circle around it. Alright, so let's just say they got back to here. So again, alright, so encounter sighted. Oops, don't know why that's so big. Does not need to be that big. Alright. Okay. Right, so encounter 2. So we've encountered something and now it's optional. So I'm going to go back to encounters. I'm going to go back to movement. Oops, what's going on there? Need some black. Okay, so alright. Encounter sighted, engagement optional. So I'm going to now click on that, and then I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to delete. Now, alright, on their way back, they've found some more loot. Alright, so click on encounters, go and select the loot, and then cut the loot, and then go in here and then paste the loot. And so for one day they've managed to bring home some bacon. Not much bacon, but some bacon. So okay, so first things first, so that's 8,485 silver pieces. Now, first things first, we're going to divide that by 2. Because 50% is going to go to Wild B because he's the sponsor and he's putting up the boat, and also he's he basically made everyone agree to him receiving 50%. Anyway, then we're going to divide the remainder by 20. So 212 silver pieces is what everybody has earned for the entire day. Now, not a huge amount to be receiving as the 1/20th share, but still, that's what they've made for the day. Anyway, I'm going to end this live stream now, and I'll basically just process some other moves, and I'll come back with another geopolitical later. This time, I'm not going to, from the future, I'm not going to be writing the story at the start of each geopolitical. It's just going to be purely processing the moves, and we'll see how quickly I can process the moves once I've got the method down. It's so my first impressions of what I'm doing and how it's processing, they're pretty good. I was thinking that it was going to be a little bit harder to maneuver around. I need to remember what layer I'm on before I actually do anything, like no control C's, no control V's, ensuring that I'm on the right layer before I do anything permanent. So anyway, just one final thing is that I'm going to geopolitical groups. Okay, now let me see. Right, why is it so? Okay, unassigned people. Delete that. Okay, so unassigned people is not it. Geopolitical groups is it. So, alright, so I'm just going to try to explain what I was just doing just now. Alright, so what I've got is sorry. Sorry, mucking around with this. Alright, I think that I've worked it out now. So, what I've got is a bit of a problem. Alright. Okay, what I'm trying to achieve here is I'm trying to assign the people who are in the town of Devlin. So they came to Devlin. Yeah, they came to Devlin, and some of them are wanting to go off and do geopolitical moves. So in terms of who leads a geopolitical move, well, the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to make sure that the masters, there are a few masters in town, so the town of Devlin has a few masters in it, and so I think that they're kind of the logical choice for leading a position. So we've got Wild B up here. Then we've got another one here, and there's going to be a group of 4 adventuring parties just where I've selected, and the same thing with here. So that's another group, and then finally we'll have another group here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 geopolitical groups at the very least. Now, not everyone's wanting to go out and do these adventures. Some people are like just wanting to go home. So I'm thinking that just for the start, just out of the population of Devlin and the people in that have come to Devlin for the party, and in terms of geopolitical moves for the first month, so first month of moves, I think that having 4 individuals out of Stock Arc, and I'll do the same thing with the other provinces as well. I'm going to process 4 of these groups in the first month, and so effectively that's 16 geopolitical groups, and I'll be processing 1 day of moves per per real world day. I'm going to hopefully process 16 moves in that 1 day. If I can make it so that I can do, let's just say 1 move per in 5 minutes. I think that's reasonably manageable. I might make the actual live streams shorter per day, and I might do 16 separate videos in 1 day, and those might be like a 15-minute live stream, so that people can, and I'll be putting those into their own playlists, so that people don't have to watch the entire every single episode. They can just tune in to a particular geopolitical group. The other thing is that I will be trying to do it like an overview. I could just simply click on the maps of the provinces to show, and you'll be able to see a slow progression of reveal of territory and things like that as well. So anyway, we'll get to it. So again, thanks for joining us. If I'm going to the actual stories that I've been writing, I'll basically put them up onto the renegadelarp.com website, so people can go and see them there. But yes, I mean, you can see it on the screen, but pausing it and things like this would be a pain in the neck. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Any more information that people want to find out, go to renegadelarp.com. And if you want to send me a private message or anything like that, if you've got any specific questions,